I went to celebrate Mother's Day at a restaurant when a waiter discreetly left a note on my table. Don't drink the wine your daughter served. I froze in shock and quietly switched my glass with hers. 10 minutes later, she started screaming, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The burgundy tablecloth felt soft under my fingers as I smoothed it nervously, waiting for Jolie to return from the restroom. Romano's had always been our special place, the same corner booth where we'd celebrated her high school graduation, her college acceptance, even her first real job. But something felt different this Mother's Day, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Mom, you look beautiful tonight, Jolie had said when she picked me up, but her smile hadn't reached her eyes. At 61, I'd learned to read people pretty well, especially my own daughter. There was a tension in her shoulders, a forced quality to her laughter that made my stomach flutter with unease. I glanced around the dimly lit restaurant, taking in the familiar scents of garlic and wine, the soft murmur of conversations from other families celebrating. The waiter who'd been serving us, Marcus, according to his name tag, had been attentive all evening, perhaps overly so. He'd refilled our water glasses twice, straightened our silverware, and kept glancing at our table with an expression I couldn't read. When Jolie excused herself to powder her nose, claiming the dim lighting was making it hard to see her reflection, I thought nothing of it. She'd always been particular about her appearance. But as I sat alone, watching other mothers laugh with their children, that nagging feeling in my chest grew stronger. Marcus appeared beside our table so quietly I startled. His hands were shaking slightly as he pretended to adjust the wine glasses, and when our eyes met, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Fear. Excuse me, ma'am, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the ambient noise. His eyes darted toward the restroom area, then back to me. I need to tell you something. Before I could respond, he slipped a small piece of paper under my bread plate and moved away quickly, busying himself with clearing a nearby table. My heart pounded as I carefully pulled out the note, unfolding it with trembling fingers. The words were written in hasty blue ink. Don't drink the wine your daughter poured. I know what she put in it. My entire world tilted. I read the note again, certain I'd misunderstood, but the words remained the same. The wine glass in front of me, a beautiful Merlot that Jolie had specifically ordered for me, saying she wanted to treat me to something special, suddenly looked sinister. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to keep my expression neutral. Jolie would be back any moment. My mind raced through the evening's events, searching for signs I'd missed. She'd been the one to order the wine while I was looking at the menu. She'd insisted on pouring it herself, saying she wanted to serve her mother properly. And now that I thought about it, she hadn't touched her own glass at all. The sound of heels clicking on tile announced Jolie's return. I quickly slipped the note into my purse and tried to compose my face into what I hoped was a serene expression. But inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs. Sorry, Mom. The line was longer than expected, she said, sliding back into the booth. Her eyes immediately went to my untouched wine glass. You haven't tried the Merlot yet. I spent quite a bit picking out something I thought you'd love. There it was, that subtle pressure, disguised as thoughtfulness. I was waiting for you to sit down, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. You know how I am about manners. Jolie laughed, but it sounded hollow. Always the proper lady. Come on, let's toast. She raised her own glass, which I now noticed contained significantly less wine than mine. I lifted my glass, my hand surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my mind. What should we toast to? To mothers and daughters, she said, her eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. To family bonds that can never be broken. As we clinked glasses, an idea formed in my mind. It was risky, but I had to know the truth. You know what? I just remembered. I need to wash my hands before we eat. That door handle in the restroom looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. I stood up, noting how Jolie's face flickered with something... disappointment? Frustration? Oh, Mom, you and your germophobia. The food will get cold. Just give me 1 second, sweetheart. I walked toward the restroom, but instead of going inside, I ducked behind a decorative column where I could see our table but remain hidden. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Jolie glanced around nervously, then quickly switched our wine glasses. When she was satisfied no one was looking, She took a tiny sip from what had originally been my glass, just enough to wet her lips, and immediately made a disgusted face, reaching for her water. My legs felt weak. My own daughter had drugged my wine and was now sitting there waiting for me to return and drink it. The woman I'd given birth to, raised, loved unconditionally for 33 years, was trying to. What? What could she possibly want that would drive her to this? I forced myself to walk back to the table on unsteady legs. Jolie looked up with a bright smile that now seemed grotesque to me. "Feel better?" "Much," I said, settling back into my seat. The wine glass sat in front of me like a threat. "Thank you for waiting." "Of course. Now, let's enjoy our toast properly." I watched her face carefully as I raised the glass to my lips. There was an eagerness there, a barely contained excitement that made my stomach turn. But instead of drinking, I pretended to stumble slightly, catching the edge of the table. Oh, how clumsy of me. The wine sloshed, but didn't spill. "Mom, are you okay?" Jolie's concern seemed genuine, but I caught the flash of annoyance that crossed her features. "I'm fine, just a little dizzy. Maybe I should eat something first before drinking on an empty stomach." Jolie's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, but just a small sip won't hurt. It really is a lovely wine." The pressure was subtle but relentless. Every few minutes, she'd find a reason to mention the wine, to encourage me to drink. When the appetizers arrived, she suggested the wine would pair beautifully with the bruschetta. When I commented on the restaurant's ambiance, she said a glass of wine would help me relax and enjoy it more. But I wasn't going to drink that wine. Not when Marcus was watching from across the restaurant with worry etched on his face. Not when my daughter's behavior was becoming more agitated with each passing minute that I remained alert and lucid. As we waited for our entrees, I excused myself again, this time actually going to the restroom. I needed a moment to think, to process what was happening. In the privacy of the bathroom stall, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my terror. My daughter, my baby girl, was trying to drug me. The question that haunted me as I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror was simple and devastating. Why? When I returned to the table, I found Jolie texting furiously, her manicured nails clicking against her phone screen with sharp, agitated taps. The moment she saw me, the phone disappeared into her purse so quickly I almost missed it. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" I asked, settling back into my seat. "Oh, just work stuff. You know how it is." Her laugh was brittle. "They never leave you alone, even on Mother's Day." But I knew Jolie had been between jobs for the past 3 months. She'd told me she was taking time to figure out her next career move, though I suspected it had more to do with the company downsizing she'd mentioned in passing. Another lie to add to whatever web she was weaving tonight. Our entrees arrived, and I noticed Marcus serving us personally instead of sending over one of the other waiters. His hands were steadier now, but his eyes kept flicking between me and the wine glass with unmistakable concern. "This looks wonderful," I said, cutting into my salmon. "You know, I think I'll wait on the wine until after dinner. This fish is so delicate I don't want anything to overpower the flavor." Jolie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Mom, you're being silly. Wine enhances the meal. That's the whole point." "I know, honey, but my stomach's been a little sensitive lately. Maybe it's better if I ease into it." The lie came easily, but I hated how natural deception felt in this moment. When had my relationship with my daughter become a battlefield where honesty was a luxury I couldn't afford? "You never mentioned stomach problems before." Jolie's voice carried a sharp edge I rarely heard. "Well, I don't like to worry you with every little ache and pain. You have enough on your plate." As we ate, I studied my daughter's face in the soft candlelight. When had those worry lines appeared around her eyes? When had her smile become so calculated? I realized with a sick feeling that I'd been seeing what I wanted to see for months, maybe longer. The daughter I thought I knew, successful, independent, loving, might have been a carefully constructed facade. "You seem tense tonight, Jolie. Is everything really okay?" She set down her fork and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Her palm was damp with perspiration. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired, and maybe a little emotional. You know how Mother's Day gets to me." It was true that Jolie had always been sentimental about holidays, but this felt different. There was a desperation in her touch, a pleading quality to her voice that made my chest tight with anxiety. "I appreciate you bringing me here tonight, I know Romano's isn't cheap. Nothing's too expensive for my mother. The words came out too quickly, too rehearsed. Besides, you deserve to be spoiled. You've done so much for me over the years. There it was again, that strange emphasis, as if she was trying to convince herself as much as me. My mind wandered to the past few months, searching for clues I'd missed. The phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. The way she'd deflected questions about her job search. The expensive outfit she was wearing tonight despite claiming to be tight on money. As dinner progressed, Jolie's behavior became increasingly erratic. She kept checking her phone, despite apologizing each time. Her conversation felt forced, jumping from topic to topic without any natural flow. And every few minutes, like clockwork, she'd mention the wine. "Are you sure you don't want just a tiny sip? It's really exceptional. Maybe we should ask for a wine menu. Perhaps something lighter would be better?" "I feel terrible that I picked out this beautiful bottle and you're not enjoying it." The pressure was relentless, but I held firm, and with each passing minute, I could see Jolie becoming more agitated. Her jaw clenched when she thought I wasn't looking. Her fingers drummed against the table in a nervous rhythm that made me want to reach out and still them. It was when she excused herself to take a quick call that I made my decision. The moment she stepped outside, I caught Marcus's attention and gestured for him to come over. "Thank you," I whispered urgently. "For the warning. How did you know?" His face was grave. "I work part-time at Mitchell's Pharmacy downtown. Your daughter came in yesterday asking about sleep aids, claiming she needed something strong for her mother who was having trouble sleeping. When she pressed for something stronger than over-the-counter options, I got suspicious. Then when I saw her here tonight, pouring your wine while you weren't looking, my blood turned to ice. Sleep aids? Strong ones. I couldn't sell them to her without a prescription, but there are other ways to get them." He glanced toward the door where Jolie had disappeared. "Ma'am, if she's drugged that wine, you need to be very careful. I haven't drunk any of it, but I need to know what she's planning." Marcus nodded grimly. "Do you want me to call someone? The police?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Not yet. I need to understand what's happening first. Then be careful, and if you need help, just signal me." When Jolie returned, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright with what looked like barely contained panic. "Sorry about that. Crisis at work. I thought you said you weren't working right now." She froze for just a moment. "Consulting work, freelance stuff, very irregular." Another lie. They were piling up like autumn leaves, and I was drowning in them. "Well, I hope they're paying you well for disturbing your Mother's Day dinner." "They are." Her voice was tight. "Very well." As we finished our meal, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to switch the glasses back and see what happened when Jolie drank her own poison. "I think I'll use the ladies' room once more before we leave," I said, standing up. All that water. But instead of going to the restroom, I positioned myself behind the same column as before. I watched as Jolie immediately pulled out her phone and made another frantic call. "It's not working," I heard her hiss into the phone. "She won't drink it. What am I supposed to do now?" She listened for a moment, then her voice rose slightly. "I can't just force it down her throat. This was supposed to be subtle." Another pause. Then, "Fine, but if this doesn't work, I'm out. I can't do this anymore." When she hung up, she sat back in her chair and buried her face in her hands. For a moment, she looked so young and lost that my heart ached for her, but then she straightened up, her expression hardening into something I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath and made my move. While Jolie was distracted, I crept closer to our table, staying low and out of sight. With movements I prayed were too quick to notice, I switched the wine glasses back to their original positions. By the time I emerged from the restroom, everything looked exactly as it had when I'd left. "Ready for dessert?" Jolie asked, and I could hear the forced cheerfulness in her voice. "Actually, I think I'm ready for that wine now. You've been so patient with me." Her face lit up with genuine relief. "Oh, wonderful. I knew you'd love it once you tried it." I raised my glass, the one that had originally been mine, the one she'd switched, the one that was now safely in front of her. To the best daughter a mother could ask for. We clinked glasses, and I watched as Jolie took a generous sip of wine. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was so focused on watching me drink that she didn't realize what she'd done to herself. I pretended to take a small sip, careful to barely let the wine touch my lips. Within minutes, I could see the effects beginning to take hold of Jolie. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she had to blink several times to focus. "Mom," she said slowly, her words beginning to slur slightly. "I feel strange." "Strange how, sweetheart?" "Dizzy. Like I can't quite." She gripped the edge of the table, her face going pale. "Something's wrong. Something's really wrong." As I watched my daughter struggle with the effects of her own drug, I felt no satisfaction, only a deep, bone-crushing sadness. Whatever had driven her to this point, whatever she was planning, it was about to unravel in the most devastating way possible. "I think I need some air," Jolie mumbled, her words becoming more slurred with each passing minute. She tried to stand but swayed dangerously, gripping the table for support. "Here, let me help you," I said, moving to her side with what I hoped looked like motherly concern rather than the calculated observation it really was. "Maybe you're coming down with something." "No, this isn't. This doesn't feel like being sick." Her eyes were wide with confusion and growing fear. "Mom, I think someone put something in my drink." The irony was so bitter I could taste it. "That's impossible, sweetheart. You poured the wine yourself." "But I feel so." She swayed again and I caught her arm. "Everything's getting fuzzy. My thoughts are all jumbled." I guided her back into her seat, my mind racing. How long did I have before the drug took full effect? How long before she realized what had happened? And most importantly, how long before whatever plan she'd set in motion fell apart completely? "Just sit here and breathe," I told her, signaling Marcus with my eyes. He approached immediately, his face etched with concern that wasn't entirely an act. "Is everything all right? Should I call someone?" "I think my daughter might be having an allergic reaction to something," I said carefully. "Could you bring us some water? And maybe somewhere quiet where she can rest?" Marcus nodded. "We have a private dining room in the back. Very quiet." As he led us through the restaurant, I supported Jolie's increasingly unsteady steps. She was mumbling under her breath, fragments of words I couldn't quite catch. But as we settled into the secluded room, her phone began to ring. She fumbled for it with clumsy fingers, nearly dropping it twice before managing to answer. "Hello?" Even from across the small table, I could hear an agitated male voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out the words. I can't think straight," Jolie slurred into the phone. "Something went wrong. I feel terrible." The voice on the other end grew sharper, more demanding. Jolie's face crumpled, and tears began to stream down her cheeks. "I don't know what happened. I did exactly what you said. I put it in her wine, just like we planned, but she wouldn't drink it, and now I feel like I'm dying." My blood turned to ice. There it was, the confession I'd been dreading. But the voice on the phone was still talking, and Jolie was responding with increasing desperation. "No, I can't get her to sign anything now. Look at me, I can barely hold the phone. And she's completely alert." She paused, listening. Then her voice rose to nearly a shout. "I'm not making excuses. Something went wrong." She was crying openly now, mascara streaking down her face in dark rivulets. "Please, just come get me. I think I'm having a bad reaction. What if it kills me? What if I die?" The person on the other end must have hung up because Jolie stared at her phone for a long moment before letting it clatter to the table. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "Jolie," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What were you trying to get me to sign?" She looked up at me through her tears, and for a moment I saw my little girl again, scared, confused, in trouble too deep to handle alone. But then her expression shifted, hardening into something desperate and calculating even through the haze of the drug. "I don't know what you're talking about. You just told someone on the phone that you couldn't get me to sign something. What was it?" She shook her head violently, then immediately regretted it as the motion made her dizzy. "You're imagining things. I never said that." But the fight was going out of her as the sedative took stronger hold. Her eyelids were drooping, and she kept having to catch herself from slumping forward. "Sweetheart, whatever trouble you're in, we can figure it out together. But I need to know what's happening." For a moment, I thought she might tell me. Her defenses were crumbling along with her consciousness. But then her phone rang again, and the sound seemed to snap her back to attention. This time, I was close enough to hear both sides of the conversation clearly. Are you completely incompetent? The male voice was cold, angry. How hard is it to get an old woman to drink a glass of wine? Don't call my mother old, Jolie mumbled, showing a flash of the daughter I remembered. Your mother is the least of your problems right now. Do you have any idea how much money is riding on this? How much debt you'll be in if this doesn't work? I know, but something went wrong. I think someone switched the glasses or… That's impossible. You're just making excuses because you're weak. I watched my daughter's face crumple under the verbal assault. Whatever hold this person had over her, it was complete and devastating. Please, she whispered into the phone. I can't do this anymore. I feel so sick. You'll feel a lot sicker when Tony's people come looking for their money. $60,000 doesn't just disappear, Jolie. And neither will you if you don't get this done. $60,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. What could my daughter possibly owe that much money for? Can't we wait? Do it another time when I'm feeling better? There is no other time. The inheritance paperwork expires next week. If you don't get her signature by then, the money goes into probate and we're all screwed. Inheritance paperwork. My mind reeled as pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I was solving began to fall into place. What inheritance? I hadn't received any notification about an inheritance. But what if she dies? What if I gave her too much? Jolie was crying again, her words barely intelligible. She's not going to die from a couple of sleeping pills. She'll just be confused and compliant. Perfect for signing legal documents. The casual cruelty in the voice made my stomach turn. This person was talking about drugging me like I was livestock to be managed, not a human being with feelings and rights. I can't think straight, Jolie moaned. Everything's spinning. That's because you're weak, just like your mother. At least she's got money to make up for it. Don't talk about her like that. Even drugged and desperate, Jolie's loyalty to me flickered to life. She's a good person. She doesn't deserve this. Good people don't have $60,000 in gambling debts, sweetheart. Good people don't steal from their employers. Good people don't get involved with loan sharks who break kneecaps for fun. Each revelation hit me like a hammer blow. Gambling debts, theft, loan sharks. My successful, independent daughter was none of those things. She was a scared, desperate woman who'd gotten in so deep that drugging her own mother seemed like a reasonable solution. I want to stop, Jolie whispered. I want to go home. You can go home when you get the job done, not before. The line went dead, and Jolie stared at the phone as if it were a snake that had just bitten her. Then she looked at me, and I saw the exact moment when she realized I'd heard everything. Mom, she said, her voice small and broken. I can explain. But before she could say another word, the sedative finally won. Her eyes rolled back, and she slumped forward onto the table, unconscious. I sat in the sudden silence, my mind reeling with everything I'd just learned. My daughter was a thief and a gambling addict who owed dangerous people $60,000. Someone was using her desperation to manipulate her into drugging me and stealing my inheritance. An inheritance I didn't even know I had. And now Jolie was unconscious from her own poison, leaving me alone with knowledge that felt like it might crush me. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed the one person I trusted completely, my sister Margaret. When she answered, I could barely get the words out. Maggie, I whispered, I need help. Margaret arrived at Romano's within 20 minutes, her gray hair disheveled and her face tight with worry. I'd called her from the private dining room where Jolie lay slumped over the table, still breathing but deeply unconscious. Dear God, Colleen, what happened? She rushed to Jolie's side, checking her pulse with practiced efficiency. Margaret had been a nurse for 30 years before retiring, and her medical instincts kicked in immediately. She drugged herself by accident, I said, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. She was trying to drug me. Margaret's hand froze on Jolie's wrist. What? I told her everything. The waiter's note, the switched glasses, the phone conversations I'd overheard. With each detail, Margaret's expression grew darker. We need to take her to the hospital, she said finally. Whatever she took, we don't know how much or how she'll react. She said it was just sleeping pills, a couple of them. A couple can still be dangerous, especially if she's been drinking. Margaret lifted one of Jolie's eyelids, examining her pupil. Her breathing is steady, but we shouldn't take chances. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face creased with concern. How is she? We're going to take her to get medical attention, I said. Thank you for warning me. You probably saved my life. He nodded grimly. I've seen what those pills can do when people abuse them. Your daughter. She seemed desperate when she came to the pharmacy. I almost called social services, but I wasn't sure. You did the right thing tonight. That's what matters. As Margaret and I helped Jolie to the car, she began to stir slightly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Mom? She mumbled. What's happening? We're taking you to get help, sweetheart. No. She tried to struggle, but the drugs made her movements weak and uncoordinated. Can't go to hospital. They'll ask questions. What kind of questions, Jolie? She was quiet for a moment, her head lolling against the car window. Then, in a voice so small I had to strain to hear it, she whispered, about the money I took. At the emergency room, I stayed by Jolie's side as the medical team evaluated her condition. The doctor, a kind woman about my age, confirmed that while Jolie had ingested a significant amount of sedative, she wasn't in immediate danger. She'll need to sleep it off, the doctor explained, but we'll monitor her for the next few hours to be safe. Are you aware of any history of substance abuse? The question hit me like a slap. No, I had no idea she was using anything. Sometimes families are the last to know. Addiction is very good at hiding itself. As we waited for Jolie to become more coherent, I called the one person I thought might have answers, her ex-boyfriend David. They'd dated for 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago, and while Jolie had been vague about the reasons, I'd always liked him. Mrs. Morrison? David sounded surprised to hear from me. Is everything okay? David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did Jolie have a gambling problem when you were together? The long silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I tried to help her, he said finally. I really did, but she wouldn't admit she had a problem. She kept saying she could control it, that she just needed one big win to get back to even. How bad was it? Bad enough that she emptied her savings account. Bad enough that she started borrowing from friends and family. Bad enough that I caught her going through my wallet one night looking for cash. My heart sank. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to. God, Mrs. Morrison, I wanted to so badly. But she begged me not to. She said you'd be so disappointed in her that it would kill you. She promised she'd get help. But she didn't. No. And when I tried to stage an intervention with her friends, she cut me off completely. Said I was trying to control her. By the time Jolie was alert enough to have a real conversation, it was nearly midnight. Margaret had gone home, promising to return in the morning, leaving me alone with my daughter in the sterile hospital room. How are you feeling? I asked, pulling my chair closer to her bed. Like I got hit by a truck. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, about tonight. I heard your phone calls, Jolie. All of them. Her face crumpled. I never wanted you to find out like this. How did you want me to find out? When I woke up tomorrow having signed away money I didn't even know I had? You weren't supposed to wake up confused. It was just supposed to make you sleepy and agreeable, like having a few too many glasses of wine. And then what? What was I supposed to sign? Jolie was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen back asleep. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Great Aunt Millicent's inheritance. The lawyer called last month. She left you $200,000. The number stole my breath. 200,000? The paperwork expires next week if you don't claim it. It would have gone to charity. So you decided to claim it for me? Without my knowledge? I was going to tell you after. I was going to say it was a surprise, that I'd handled all the paperwork for you as a gift. Tears were streaming down her face now. I wasn't going to keep all of it. Just enough to pay off my debts. $60,000 worth of debts. She flinched. You heard that too. I heard everything, Jolie. About the gambling, about stealing from your employer, about the loan sharks. I never stole anything. That's not true. Then where did the $60,000 go? She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking with the force of it. I borrowed it from the company's petty cash account, just temporarily. I was going to put it back after I won big on this sure thing bet. But the sure thing wasn't sure, And then I tried to win it back, and it just kept getting worse. How long has this been going on? 2 years, maybe 3. I don't know anymore. Time gets blurry when you're always chasing the next bet. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of my daughter's deception. 3 years of lies, 3 years of watching her struggle while thinking she was just going through a rough patch with her career. Who was the man on the phone? The one giving you orders? His name is Rick. He works for the people I owe money to. He said if I could get your inheritance, we could work out a payment plan. If not, she shuddered. They don't make idle threats, Mom. So you decided to drug your own mother. I didn't want to. God, do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I wanted to become the kind of person who would do something like that? She was getting agitated, her voice rising. I hate myself for even considering it. But when the alternative is having my legs broken, or worse. There are other alternatives, Jolie. There's rehab. There's bankruptcy. There are legal ways to deal with debt. Not this kind of debt. Not with these people. I studied my daughter's face in the harsh fluorescent light. When had she become so thin? When had those dark circles appeared under her eyes? How had I missed the signs of someone drowning right in front of me? The inheritance, I said finally. Is it real? She nodded miserably. The lawyer's name is Patricia Hendricks. She's been trying to reach you for weeks, but I intercepted the calls and letters. I told her I was your caregiver and that you were having some cognitive issues. You told a lawyer I was mentally incompetent? It was Rick's idea. He said it would make the paperwork easier to handle if there were questions about your signature. Each revelation felt like another knife wound. My daughter hadn't just been planning to drug and rob me. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation and autonomy to make it easier. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm so sorry. I looked at her lying in that hospital bed, broken and ashamed and scared, and I felt something shift inside me. Yes, I was angry. Yes, I was hurt beyond words. But underneath all of that, I was still her mother. Tell me about Rick, I said. Tell me everything. Jolie was discharged from the hospital the next morning with strict instructions to rest and stay hydrated. I drove her back to my house instead of her apartment, despite her weak protests that she'd be fine on her own. After what had happened, I wasn't letting her out of my sight until we figured out how to clean up this mess. Mom, you don't understand, she said as I helped her up the stairs to the guest bedroom. Rick expects an update today. If I don't answer his calls, then don't answer them. Let me handle this. You can't handle this. These aren't people you negotiate with. They're not reasonable. I settled her into bed with a glass of water and 2 aspirin. Tell me exactly how you met Rick. Jolie pulled the blanket up to her chin, looking younger than she had in years. I was at the casino downtown, the big one on 5th Street. I'd been going there for a few months, mostly just playing slots and blackjack. Small stakes, nothing serious. I sat down in the chair beside the bed. Go on. I was having a really bad night. I'd lost about $300, which was my grocery money for the month. I was sitting at the bar, trying not to cry, when this guy sat down next to me. Rick. He was older, maybe 50, really well dressed. He bought me a drink and started talking. And? He said he could tell I was a smart woman who'd just had some bad luck. He said he knew ways to turn things around, but it required thinking bigger than the penny slots. Jolie's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she was recounting someone else's story. He told me about private poker games where the real money was made. High-stakes gambling. The buy-in was $5,000. I told him I didn't have that kind of money, and he said that was okay. He could front me the money, and I could pay him back when I won. I closed my eyes, seeing exactly where this was heading. And when you didn't win? He said it was just beginner's luck. That the next game would be different. He kept fronting me money, and I kept losing. Before I knew it, I owed him $15,000. But you said you owed $60,000. Jolie's face flushed with shame. The $15,000 was just to Rick. But he introduced me to other people, other games, bigger stakes, bigger losses. And when I couldn't pay them, Rick offered to consolidate my debts, buy them out and work with me on a payment plan. With interest, I'm sure. 20% a month. The number made my stomach lurch. That's loan sharking, Jolie. That's illegal. I know that now. But at the time, I was so deep in panic mode that anything that gave me breathing room seemed like a good idea. And that's when you started taking money from your employer. She nodded miserably, just a little at first. The company was doing well, and I thought I could replace it before anyone noticed. But the more I took, the deeper I got with Rick, and the harder it became to stop. How much did you take total? $47,000 over 18 months. I leaned back in the chair, overwhelmed by the scope of her deception. Jolie, that's embezzlement. That's a felony. I know, don't you think I know that? Every day I wake up terrified that they're going to figure it out and call the police. But I was more terrified of what Rick would do if I didn't pay him. What exactly did he threaten to do? At first, it was just vague stuff about consequences and disappointment. But as the debt got bigger, the threats got more specific. She pulled the blanket higher, as if trying to hide from the memory. He showed me pictures of other people who'd defaulted on their debts, people with broken bones, missing teeth, one woman whose car had been firebombed. Did you report this to the police? And tell them what? That I owed money to a loan shark because I'm a gambling addict who embezzled from her employer? They'd arrest me before they went after Rick. She had a point, but there had to be something we could do. What about your employer? Do they know the money is missing? Not yet. I've been covering my tracks pretty well. But there's an annual audit coming up in 6 weeks. They'll find the discrepancies then. 6 weeks. That gave us some time, but not much. And Rick knows about the audit. I told him about it last month when he was pressuring me for payment. That's when he came up with the plan for your inheritance. How did he even know about the inheritance? Jolie looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I told him about Aunt Millicent when she died last year. How she never married, never had kids. How she always liked you best out of all the family. It was just casual conversation, but Rick remembered everything. So when the lawyer started calling about the inheritance, Rick had me intercept the communications and research exactly how much money was involved. When we found out it was $200,000, he said it was the perfect solution. Enough to pay off my debts and replace the money I'd taken from the company, leaving me with nothing and thinking I'd never had the inheritance in the first place. I was going to tell you about the inheritance eventually. Maybe not the full amount, but some of it. I was going to say Aunt Millicent left you $50,000 or something. The casual way she discussed defrauding me made my chest tight with anger. So I would have been grateful for a fraction of what was actually mine. I know how it sounds, but I was desperate, and I really did plan to pay you back somehow. When things got better. When were things going to get better, Jolie? When were you going to stop gambling and start dealing with reality? She was crying again, silent tears that made her look like the little girl who used to come to me with scraped knees and broken toys. I don't know. I kept thinking I'd hit a big win and everything would be okay, or that Rick would just go away if I ignored him long enough. Well, he's not going away, and we need to figure out what to do before he decides to escalate. As if summoned by my words, Jolie's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face went white as she read it. What does it say? With shaking hands, she showed me the screen. Time's up. Meet me at the usual place tonight at 8 p.m. Come alone and bring good news, or our arrangement becomes much less friendly. Where's the usual place? The parking garage behind the casino. 3rd floor, northwest corner. I stood up, my mind already working through possibilities. You're not going. Mom, I have to, if I don't show up. If you do show up, you're walking into a trap. You have nothing to give him. No signature, no inheritance paperwork, no money. What do you think he's going to do when you arrive empty-handed? The color drained from her face as the reality of her situation hit her. Oh God, what am I going to do? We're going to call the police. No, I told you, I can't involve the police. They'll arrest me for the embezzlement. They might arrest you anyway if Rick decides to hurt you and dump your body somewhere. She curled up into a ball under the blankets, overwhelmed by the impossibility of her situation. There has to be another way. I sat back down beside her, my mind racing. There might be. But you're not going to like it. What? I'm going to meet with Rick myself. Absolutely not. Mom, you don't understand what you're dealing with. This man is dangerous. And you're my daughter. Dangerous or not, I'm not letting him hurt you. But what would you even say to him? What could you possibly offer? I thought about the lawyer's number that Jolie had written down, about the inheritance I'd never known existed, about the $200,000 that could solve so many problems. I'm going to offer him exactly what he wants. The inheritance? Part of it, enough to clear your debts and make him go away. Jolie sat up in bed, her eyes wide. You'd do that? After everything I've done? You're my daughter, Jolie. That doesn't change just because you've made terrible choices, but it's your money. You don't owe Rick anything. No, I don't. But I owe you a chance to get your life back on track. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your help. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. The truth was, I had no idea if my plan would work. I didn't know if Rick would accept a negotiated settlement or if he'd see my involvement as an opportunity to squeeze more money out of the situation. But I couldn't sit back and watch my daughter's life implode without trying to help. There's one condition, I said firmly. After this is over, you get help. Real help. Rehab, therapy, whatever it takes to deal with the gambling addiction. I promise. And you confess to your employer about the missing money. We'll figure out a way to pay it back gradually, but no more lies. She nodded, looking terrified but relieved. Okay, and no more contact with Rick or anyone else from that world. If this works, you walk away completely. Yes, I swear. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for Patricia Hendricks, the lawyer handling Aunt Millicent's estate. It was time to claim an inheritance I'd never wanted and use it to save a daughter who'd tried to steal it from me. The irony wasn't lost on me, but sometimes life didn't make sense. Sometimes love meant doing the right thing, even when it felt completely wrong. Patricia Hendricks turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had been growing increasingly concerned about my apparent cognitive decline, as Jolie had described it to her. When I called and explained the real situation, there was a long pause before she spoke. Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, are you calling under duress? Is your daughter forcing you to make this call? No, Ms. Hendricks. I'm calling because I've finally learned the truth about why you haven't been able to reach me directly. When your daughter has been intercepting communications about your inheritance? Yes, she's in serious trouble, and she thought this money could solve her problems. Another pause. Mrs. Morrison, I need to be very frank with you. What your daughter has done could constitute fraud. If she's been representing herself as your caregiver and making decisions about your estate. I understand the legal implications. Right now, I'm more concerned about keeping her alive. That got her attention. I explained about Rick, about the threats, about the meeting that was supposed to happen that evening. By the end of the conversation, Patricia had agreed to expedite the inheritance paperwork and have a cashier's check ready by 5 o'clock. Mrs. Morrison, I strongly advise you to involve law enforcement in this situation. I will after my daughter is safe. And you're certain you want to use your inheritance this way? There are other options we could explore. I'm certain. At 4:30, I picked up a cashier's check for $75,000, enough to pay off Rick and replace most of the money Jolie had taken from her employer. The remaining $125,000 I left in a trust account with Patricia's firm, to be released to me only after Jolie had completed a rehabilitation program. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting in my car in the casino parking garage, my hands shaking slightly as I waited. Jolie had begged me not to go through with this, had cried and pleaded and threatened to call the police herself to stop me, but I'd made up my mind. Rick arrived exactly at 8, driving a black BMW with tinted windows. He was exactly as Jolie had described, well-dressed, confident, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He slid into my passenger seat without invitation. You must be Colleen, he said, as if we were old friends meeting for coffee. Jolie's told me so much about you. I doubt that. He laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Fair enough. Where is our mutual friend tonight? I was expecting to see her. She's not coming. I'm here to settle her debt. Rick's eyebrows rose. Are you now? And what makes you think you have anything I want? I pulled the cashier's check from my purse and showed it to him. His eyes fixed on the amount, and for the first time, his composed facade cracked slightly. $75,000. That covers what she owes you, plus interest. It covers what she owes me, but it doesn't cover the inconvenience she's caused. The time I've wasted, the stress of dealing with someone so unreliable. What are you saying? I'm saying the price has gone up, 100,000, and we call it even. I'd expected this. Men like Rick always pushed for more when they sensed weakness. I don't have 100,000, but you have more than 75. The inheritance your daughter told me about was for $200,000. Surely you can spare a little more to guarantee your daughter's safety. This is all I'm willing to pay. Rick's smile turned predatory. Mrs. Morrison, I don't think you understand the situation. Your daughter owes me money. When people don't pay what they owe, bad things happen to them. Sometimes bad things happen to their families too. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. I reached into my purse again, but instead of another check, I pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I opened the recording app that had been running since Rick got in my car. Reality is that you've just threatened an elderly woman in order to extort money from her. Reality is that this conversation is being recorded and automatically uploaded to a cloud server that my lawyer has access to. Rick's face went cold. You're bluffing. Try me. We stared at each other for a long moment, the tension in the car thick enough to cut. Finally, Rick reached for the check. 75,000. But if your daughter ever comes sniffing around my business again, the deal is off. She won't. She's getting help. People like her don't change, Mrs. Morrison. They just get better at hiding their problems. Maybe. But she's my daughter, and I'm not giving up on her. Rick pocketed the check and opened the car door. For your sake, I hope you're right. After he left, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, letting the adrenaline work its way out of my system. I'd done it. Jolie was safe, at least from this particular threat. When I got home, I found her pacing in the living room, her face streaked with tears. Mom, thank God you're okay. Did it work? It worked. You don't owe him anything anymore. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing with relief. I can't believe you did that for me, after everything I put you through. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. But the money, it was your inheritance. You should have been able to enjoy it, travel, do whatever you wanted. What I wanted was to know my daughter was safe. She looked up at me through her tears. What happens now? Now you keep your promises. Tomorrow we call your employer and arrange a meeting to discuss the missing money. And next week you check into the rehabilitation program I've already researched. And if they fire me, if they press charges, then we deal with that too, together. I'm scared, Mom. Good. Being scared means you understand how serious this is. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same chair in my living room, watching Jolie pack her things to move into her own apartment. She'd completed the rehabilitation program, confessed to her employer about the embezzlement, and somehow managed to keep her job under a strict repayment plan. She attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week and had been clean for 184 days. Are you sure you're ready to live alone again? I asked. I think so, and if I'm not, I know I can call you, day or night. She zipped up her suitcase and sat down across from me. Mom, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me. I'm listening. I'm sorry, not just for the drugging or the lying or trying to steal your inheritance. I'm sorry for wasting so many years of my life, and yours, on something that was never going to make me happy. Addiction is a disease, Jolie. You don't apologize for having cancer, but I do apologize for how I handled it, for making you pay the price for my choices. I reached over and took her hand. You paid a price too, a bigger one than me. How do you figure? I still have my daughter. For a while there, I thought I'd lost her completely. She squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with tears that looked different from the ones she'd cried 6 months ago. These were tears of gratitude, not desperation. You'll never lose me again, Mom. I promise. I smiled, thinking about the trust account Patricia still maintained with the remainder of my inheritance. The money would be released to me now that Jolie had completed her program, but I'd already decided to use part of it to help other families dealing with gambling addiction. Aunt Millicent would have approved. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. As I watched her drive away in her modest used car, purchased with money she'd earned honestly at her job, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the fragile peace of pretending everything was fine, but the solid peace of having walked through hell and come out the other side together. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Dinner tonight? I want to hear how the doctor's appointment went. I smiled and typed back, "Yes, and I have good news to share." The doctor had confirmed what I'd suspected. The stress of the past year had taken a toll on my health, but with proper care and the weight of worry lifted from my shoulders, I was going to be just fine. I looked around my quiet house, thinking about all the ways my life had changed since that Mother's Day dinner at Romano's. I'd learned that my daughter was capable of terrible things, but also that love could survive even the worst betrayals. I'd discovered that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to change. The inheritance money had been meant to provide security for my golden years. Instead, it had given me something far more valuable. It had given me back my daughter. And that was worth every penny. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.